everyone, Jeremy here from sportsmarketingmachine.com. Super excited about today's episode. I sit down with Tariq Ahmed from Sports Court Consulting. I'll put his link in the bio. He is the nation's expert on name, image, and likeness for college athletes. Why is this beneficial for sports teams? Before now, you didn't have the opportunity to be able to work with local college athletes to promote your sporting events and grow your fan base. Now you can. Tariq is going to walk us through what is NIL, what are some rules related to it, and the best way to connect with athletes. He's also going to share some specific things so it's a win-win from both sides. So without further ado, here's my interview with Tariq Ahmed from Sports Court Consulting. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Sports Marketing Machine podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Neisser. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Tariq Ahmed. Tariq, you are the NIL expert across the landscape. Your background is marvelous within marketing. Appreciate you joining today. Super excited to talk all things NIL. But before we dig into it all, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure, Jeremy. Thank you for having me on. Excited for the conversation. I know that we've known each other for 10 years probably, and very, very excited for today's talk. So yeah, as mentioned, I work in the NIL space currently. For those of you who don't know, NIL stands for name, image, likeness. So essentially this allows current college athletes to be paid for their name, image, and likeness, brand value, and services. Before July 1st, 2021, college athletes were not allowed to do that. So now we're moving into the space where they can. Quick background about myself. I spent several years in the social media realm. I did a PhD in sport management from the University of Northern Colorado, and my doctoral dissertation was on social media and the NBA. So then I parlayed that into a social media career with IBM and MetLife and some other places. And even though my daily work didn't involve sports, I still made sure to stay involved in the sports marketing realm somewhere. So when I worked with IBM, I helped the team with their Watson Fantasy Football initiative. When I worked with MetLife, I helped them with their PGA Tour partnership. Most recently, I was at Meta, which used to be called Facebook. I was a project marketing manager there. And then same thing, I helped their sports partnership team with their NIL Empower initiative. So they worked with 30 women college student athletes on NIL branding, education, how to get deals, post-career transition, etc. My work there ended at the end of December of 2022, and I figured, hey, I have time, and I like NIL, and it's a good space, so let me just go full force into it. So, I got an LLC up and running, or actually, correction, I dusted off my old LLC, and I just started putting a big push on that. Like I write an NIL newsletter, which comes out 3 times a week. I do speaking engagements, I do webinars. I hosted my own NIL Fundamentals webinar in March of this year. I consult for colleges, and I'm now moving into the high school and AAU space because they need a lot of, work there as well. And then I'm also a certified athlete agent in several states, mainly California, where you live, Jeremy, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Illinois, among other places. And then that's based on the athletes that I represent for NIL deals. So a little bit of background about me, and excited for the conversation here.
And you're also teaching at Columbia, is that right?
Yeah, Columbia, that work ended. I do teach at St. Francis College in Brooklyn, New York, so okay. I do teach sport management there. And then this coming semester, I'll be teaching at Manhattan College, which is in the Bronx. So I live in New York City. The Bronx is actually pretty close to where I live, so I'm going to be teaching sport management for undergraduate students there. And then I do help the Manhattan College Athletic Department with some NIL initiatives. Mainly for that, it's mainly education. So it's workshops and seminars for the student athletes. So I did a couple of them this past semester, and we're going to ramp that up coming into the new year. So excited for all that, and we'll see what happens.
You got a lot going on. You are extremely busy, and I think that the most glorious part about all of this is you're just educating. You're showing up, helping folks understand, because NIL is extremely new, not only to just the athletes, but to the universities and companies that are brands that are looking to say, hey, I want to take advantage of this. So a lot of your time is just really spent educating what the rules are and what they aren't, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the key, is just, schools and athletes need the understanding of education, right? Because, when I speak with athletes, the number one question they ask me is, how do I get started? And to me, I tell them that before you even think about deals and money and working with cool companies, it's like, what do you want from NIL, right? It's like, what does your personal brand look like? know your why is something I always say, right? It's like, why do you want to do NIL? What are you wanting to get out of it? What does your brand look like? How do you want to reflect it, et cetera? And same thing for schools, as you mentioned. So, a lot of the big schools, like the Power Five schools, have NIL resources, whether it's in-house or they use an external partner. But I mean, that's only 100 something schools out of 1,100 NCAA schools. So there's, a huge market that's untapped for that, and they need that education. And it's the same thing. It's like, not only does the school need the education, in turn, their athletes need that NIL education as well, right? Along with the coaches and the administrators. So yeah, a lot of it is just educating the schools and the student athletes about what NIL is about and like how they can leverage it going forward.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk some of the rules. Let's just put myself in a position as a brand. I want to reach out to the local basketball guy. Maybe it's Drew Timme at Gonzaga. I want to reach out, and I'm interested in doing a partnership with him. What are some rules right out of the gate that if I'm a sports team or if I'm a brand, that I should know, like right out of the gate when it comes to NIL?
Sure, great question. So the number one thing you should know is not to be negative, but what's not allowed, right? So alcohol companies cannot do deals with college athletes, tobacco, cannabis, adult entertainment, like assault weapons, and there's like a handful of categories you can. So someone like Hennessy cannot approach Drew Timme for a deal, or a casino cannot approach that as well. Interestingly enough, you actually mentioned Drew Timme, because in Washington State, the rules are a little bit different. So I know with casinos, Drew Timme actually did a partnership with the local casino last year or in 2021. So, depending on that, the rules, it could be a little bit different, but in general, gambling and sports betting is not allowed. So I think, say that you're just, a water brand, right? So Jeremy the Waterman comes into Drew Timme's, contact. You can either DM him on Instagram or social media. If you know his agent, if he has one, you can go through the agent and go through their company and learn more about it. And then you basically give them a pitch, right? It's just, I'm Jeremy, I represent this company. I want to do a deal with Drew Timme. We feel that he would be very beneficial to our brand because XYZ, like we have the number one hydration system in the world, based on, our research and our scientists, and because obviously he's working very hard on the basketball court, like he'll be ready to go faster and recover quicker. So, I think the key also with brands is that instead of just messaging the athlete just to say like, hey, it's cool, like it may be cool to work with a Drew Timme or a Caleb Williams or an Angel Reese, but I think also the brand should provide something in value for the athlete, right? It's something that, hey, Drew, we want to work with you. Here's some content ideas, right? It's just like, let's have you using our hydration product post-workout, or when you're walking off the bus to go to the game, you have our bottle in your hand. So that's like a nice product placement, So like, I think like having a little bit of that, and giving the athlete a little bit of context is very helpful. So yeah, from the brand perspective, it's, give them an idea, go to them, and then, see how the conversation goes from there.
So I think one of the things that has been really unique is that brands, your Dollar Shave Clubs and some of your bigger brands that have huge budgets can go to some of these athletes. But even at the lower level, in some of these cities where there's minor league baseball in Birmingham, Alabama, and Spokane, Washington, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, they're small towns, but they're mid-major universities that have athletes that are fairly popular in their community. And it could be the quarterback at the football team or the star basketball player or even the baseball player as well. What are some things that teams should think about when they're going out and they say, hey, this might be a good idea for us. We want to pitch the star quarterback to come out and help us promote XYZ giveaway or a promotion or what have you. What are some things that they should be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Interestingly enough, I actually just did a video about this past Friday about NIL deals at the local level have so much value, right? They have value for the brand because you not only tap into the local athletes' engagement and visibility, but then you're now building a relationship with your local community, right? Because you're right, the mid-major quarterback may not get a deal with Gatorade or, like
Nike
water,
or whoever it is.
Nike or whoever, exactly, yeah. But, like the local car dealership or the local tire shop or the local accountant, like there's real value in that, right? Because again, it's just, you tap into the athletes, visibility and engagement. In turn, the athlete gets a little bit of financial support, and then they build a relationship with that brand, right? Where it could be, hey, I really like your brand. Let's continue to do this. Can I come out to your accounting firm once a month and do a meet and greet, right? And then from there, it could be, oh, actually, I'm an accounting major. Then that could turn into a job afterwards, So I think that the local brands definitely should not shy away from doing NIL deals, right? Because again, there's so much value at the local level. And to be honest, that's where a lot of the deals happen, right? Because Jeremy, you and I have been in the sports marketing realm for a long time, so we read a lot of the national publications. So we see the Nike deals and the Jordan brand and the Titleist and all that, but we don't see a lot of the local taco shop or the local clothing shop. That's where the real value comes in for NIL, right? And especially for the mid-major, athletes, or even Division II and Division III, right? It's just, hey, an extra $50 per month in your pocket is great. It doesn't have to be with a huge brand, but if they provide value to you and you provide value to them, that's where it really is. So I think the brands from the local level should absolutely, invest into what can be offered in their either the local town or their, the hometown heroes or what have you. So a lot of value there.
You started to bring up some dollar amounts, and that's another question that I hear often is, well, how much? We see folks at the bigger, larger level, Drew Timme getting $2 million, and some of these other ones from different deals across the board. We can't afford that. We're a local sports team. We're just trying to get fans to our games. What's like, when you do your pitch, should you include the dollar amount? What's a range? Teams just have no idea.
Yeah, great question. I think that from a team's perspective, you should see how much is the value that you're providing, right? Say it's something like, okay, Drew Timme, we'll give you four sweet tickets to our local team's baseball game, and you get the full range of food, and you'll come throw out the first pitch, XYZ. I think that you should calculate that from there, right? Okay, say the suite, it's just a suite for you and your family, and you get the full buffet, and there's nobody else in your suite with you. We charge, $1,000 or something like that, So throwing out the first pitch, I don't know if that works, if it's just a community service thing, or is it hey, people can pay to come throw the first pitch. Say it's the latter, say it's $500, so that's $1,500, right? So say it's, okay, Drew Timme, we're going to give you this package. We'll also give you $1,500 to support this, right? And then Drew could say no, my minimum is $10,000, which you may say, okay, that's a little bit rich, but maybe we'll try to work something else out. It's just hey, maybe you come throw out the first pitch and we'll do something else later. So, I think just going off of, MSRP, to use
Sure.
our terms, is definitely important, and just do, a quick calculation on what it is. And from talking to other brands, I know that brands appreciate when athletes come to them with a dollar amount. They'll actually say, in reverse of your question, right? Where it's,
Sure.
The brands will say I actually don't even care how much the number is. Even if they give me some ridiculous number, they're actually coming with a number, which is as opposed to, oh, I don't know, what do you think? How much is it worth, et cetera? Because if an athlete is coming and saying, oh, I take no less than 5,000, okay, well, we can offer you 2,500, but let's work backwards against that number to see, So I think, knowing the value of what you're providing, adding a little bit more, just to kind of appease the athlete a little bit, and then you start the conversation from there and work with it. So I think also you have to factor in if the athlete has an agent or not, because the agent may take a cut from the team, or the agent may take a cut from the athlete, so they'll want a little bit of a piece of it themselves. I'm an athlete agent as well, so I have to look out for that if I'm bringing deals to my athletes as well. So yeah, but it's just knowing what it's worth and then providing the value from there.
Sure. Now, is there some negotiating room sometimes? And then the other side of that too is, do you see sometimes that student athletes overvalue themselves? Hey, I want 10 grand. You're playing for the D2 team here. The numbers don't match. So number one, is there negotiation? And number two, do you see athletes overvalue themselves?
Yeah, good. Both good questions. So the first thing is that there definitely is room for negotiation. To be honest, life is a negotiation of sorts. So, I think that there's nothing that can't be negotiated in the terms. And I think that's just standard, right? Whether you're buying a house, whether you're buying a car, whether you are, haggling with someone at the local state fair about hot dogs, whatever it is, right? And there's absolutely room for negotiation, because somebody has to make the first move. And I think it's fair for either side to come back, right? Because it could be the brand says, okay, we're going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is how much we're paying. You slide it to the athlete. The athlete may say, okay, I'll do 1, 2, and 3. I don't want to do number 4. Definitely out on 5, and I want a little bit more money. And then you just go back and forth from there. So as mentioned, I did an NIL fundamentals webinar earlier this year, and I went through an example deal of, someone who was a field hockey player for a school and how they negotiated with the local smoothie shop. And then I basically put that in there where it says, okay, this is what the athlete is offering. Here's what the brand is offering. They go back and forth a couple times and then they meet in the middle on something. So there's absolutely room for negotiation on both sides. And then to your second question, I do feel sometimes that athletes will overvalue themselves because I think that they may see other athletes doing something else and they may not have that reach, right? So they may say something that, okay, say they're a Division II tennis player, where it's, okay, my teammate got a deal with the local car dealership and she's getting a car and $2,000 a month. I should get the same thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, but then that teammate may have 25,000 Instagram followers, they may have 50,000 TikTok followers, they may have, 5,000 Twitter followers, and she's creating content 4 or 5 times a week, and like she's engaging and she's funny. That just because she's your teammate, is she putting out more content than you? If I go to your page and see like, wow, you put out 2 posts this year, that you don't have the same leverage, So I think that in order for athletes not to overvalue themselves, they should see what they're providing, right? If you're going back, if the first athlete is saying that, hey, look at, I'm getting like all this great engagement, I have this big audience, and a brand is coming back and saying, oh, okay, cool, we'll give you 2 free bottles of shampoo, then she can go back and say, no, I'm being undervalued in this case, So I think the key is, going back, knowing your why, seeing what kind of content you have, knowing what type of value you have, and then pricing yourself accordingly from there. So, because I think it's, I will say in defense of that, I think it is better to overvalue yourself and then come down as opposed to undervaluing yourself and someone saying like, okay, that works for me, we'll pay you X amount.
2 bottles of champagne or
exactly.
shampoo or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. No champagne. Yeah. No
champagne. Just shampoo.
Exactly. Just shampoo. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But then they set the bar for themselves too low, unfortunately. So even if an athlete is overvaluing themselves, I actually don't see a problem in them saying like, okay, I'll take your 2 bottles of shampoo and $100 a month, even something. The brand may come back and say, we'll give you 2 bottles of shampoo and $50 a month. Cool, that's $50 more than you had before,
that's
as
right.
opposed to just products. So I think the key is, again, like I could see athletes overvaluing themselves, but they should see what value they're providing to brands first before they decide on a number.
So you brought up some great points specific to social media numbers, and that seems to be, in addition to the popularity of the athlete, but it's the social media numbers that seem to be the really intriguing piece for a lot of brands, specifically sports teams. Oh, this person has an enormous Facebook audience or Instagram or posts a lot on TikTok. They have an enormous audience. I want to do an NIL deal with them. Is that one of the filters that brands should use as they look to do these deals, is the social media side of things? Or what are some things that the brands should look at when they're looking out to pitch to a specific athlete?
Yeah, social media is definitely the big one. I think because I read a stat from Open Doors, which is one of the leading marketplaces, said that I think 75% of all deals are done through social media. So, the brands want visibility there. The athletes have audiences and visibility there as well. So, I think the key is that's what a lot of brands are looking at. You may have a little bit from other aspects where it's okay, like you meet them face to face and you may want to do a print ad or a billboard or a meet and greet, something. But even then, a lot of that content is getting to social media in general. So, social media is not the full pie on what it should be used, but it's a very large portion of the pie on what it is. So, because again, it's the athletes are there, that's their generation, which means the brands are there too, and they're trying to tap into new audiences as well, right? Because it's, hey, the local tire shop doesn't have the 13 to 18-year-old Gen Z market, but your 19-year-old tennis player does, right?
Sure.
So it's like, hey, this is a new way for us to tap into a new audience and build some fans and followers. So social media is definitely the largest driver of these deals and platforms, but it's not the only one. But it's definitely probably the most valuable.
Understand completely. So that field hockey video that you mentioned, just send me the link. I'm going to include it in the show notes, so in case someone has an interest in it, for sure to dig into it. So as they set together these deals, who puts together the contract, the brand or the athlete?
Yeah, good question. It's usually both, actually. So usually it's like, if I'm an agent, like I have my own contract that I work on behalf of the brand, and then the brand will have their contract that they have to negotiate with, right? So usually the brand will generally lead the conversation because it's, hey, we're offering the student athlete this product, here's your stipulation, etc. And then usually from my end, they have certain guidelines to meet, right? So we'll just do an example deal. It's like, okay, Lily, the softball player, has a deal with the local taco shop, something like that. So the brand may come and say like, okay, Lily needs to post, 2 videos per month, both on Tuesday for Taco Tuesday, and then once this is completed for the month, we'll pay her, the X number of dollars. And then from my end, the contract would basically state the same thing and saying that once your contractual obligations are fulfilled, the money comes to me as the agent from the brand, and then once that your 2 videos are up, then I'll pay you your portion. So that way, it's you have to make sure that both sides are in, because usually I have an athlete sign a contract before we even begin representation, and it just states things like you act in good faith, I act in good faith as well. Make sure that you're fulfilling your duties, and if any problems, let me know. So. Yeah, so I would say the contracts generally come from the brands, but then there should be a secondary contract as well from my end to uphold what the athlete is responsible for what I represent them for.
So this is a curveball here because I don't think I included it in some of the questions we talked about before we hit record, but what's the difference between influencers, being an influencer marketing, and using NIL deals? Is there a huge difference, or is there kind of like a gray area in between?
Yeah, I'd say it's actually pretty much a gray area because it's they could essentially be one and the same, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, say we're going back to, Evian, right? And it's, okay, so you are pitching the track and field athlete Evian, and then you're pitching the local fitness influencer Evian. It's still the same thing, right? Because it's still, they're still using their influence to tap into their specific audience and their specific demographic. So, NIL is essentially a form of influencer marketing because you are tapping into that person's specific audience and their influence on their fans and followers. So I agree with you. It's actually very little gray area, and I mean, it's a gray area, and there's a lot of overlap that happens there.
Sure, 100%. Well, every episode I like to do the takeaways, and these are the actionable tips for folks to be able to take away and say, okay, I'm going to implement these. The first thing NIL stands for is name, image, and likeness. If you're a professional sports team, you're all good. You can pitch athletes, but if you're being asked by your beer company or a cannabis company or someone that's one of your sponsors to be able to do it, the answer is no. It has to be the team and the team only, right?
Correct. Yeah. So some of those things are going to be off limits as mentioned, and it's interesting from the college perspective where a lot of colleges will provide the athletes with education and resources and compliance, and some schools are now offering legal advice where it's, hey, if you have a contract from a brand, bring it to our law school and our law school students will review it for you. Or it's, hey, you're a student athlete and you made $5,000 in NIL deals last year and you have all these 1099 tax forms. Like we have our finance department in our business school can do your taxes for you, XYZ. So the schools can provide education, but a lot of schools, if not any, can actually provide any deals, right? So like they can't go out and say like, hey, I represent this college. We have these athletes that want to do these deals, right? So it's the athletes themselves have to go out and get the deals, right? And then the interesting thing also from that is that, even if a school is affiliated with one brand, an athlete can definitely do a deal in the same category with some restrictions. Like, for example, you have LSU women's basketball who had a massive season this past year, national championship, huge popularity. One of their athletes, Flau'jae Johnson, signed a deal with Puma, right? So like LSU is a Nike school, but Flau'jae signed a deal with Puma, which means that whenever Flau'jae has to do any team-related events, whether it's games, whether it's practices, whether it's on-campus facilities, like in the facilities, she has to wear Nike. But anything else on her day off, she's walking around campus to class, she's doing photo shoots, she can wear Puma because she's not restricted by that. Obviously, if a school is trying to represent, their athletes, which they can't, of course they're just going to go to Nike and say, hey, get our athletes some deals. So it's an interesting take, right? Where it's like the schools can provide education and guidance, but they can't really go past that. They're just trying to provide some guardrails for the athletes.
So the next takeaway for teams are go on social media and talk to the athletes that you're interested. Pitch them through DMs. But before you do that, you need to have some sort of win-win of what you want to propose, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think also it takes some homework from the brands as well, right? Because it's going to take some homework from the athletes at first to say like, hey, I want to align myself with this brand because I use it all the time or it aligns with my personal values, etc. And then agreed from the brand as well. It should be a win-win. It should be just be like, hey, we like who you are. We like what you stand for. Here's what we're proposing. Are you open to a conversation? So yes, I think that's the key because you have to provide them, like both sides have to provide something to each other, right? Like the athlete has to provide, an audience to them or, a market or, consistency for whatever. So yeah, so definitely if you're a brand, you definitely have to provide the athlete some value as well.
So the biggest driver here, one of the biggest drivers, is social media. So as the teams start to take a look at, hey, I want to go out and pitch this the star quarterback or the star basketball player, to take a look at their social media audience, how active they're on social media, and then put together a pitch that includes posting on social media, coming to a game, maybe even putting their face on billboards and promoting something, whatever it may be, but having that package together and the values shared of, hey, here's some in-kind trade value, here's some cash value. When I say in-kind in trade, that may be, hey, you've got sweet tickets and we're going to provide your family with food. So there's some dollar amounts there, but really taking a look through that filter of what's going to be the best bang for the buck, but it's a win-win from both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think it's just like anything, right? It's any type of negotiation that both sides want something out of it, right? And, like the team wants to affiliate with the athlete may be a huge fan of the local team and they want to have that relationship. And I know that you're a baseball guy. So interestingly enough, like some pro teams actually do dip into NIL. So like the Chicago White Sox have their White Sox NIL program. So this is their second year running it. They partnered with 8 athletes that have ties to the Chicagoland area, even if whether they play in Illinois or Chicago or not, but they're from the Chicago area. And then they work with them for like custom merchandise. They have a chance to throw out the first pitch at a White Sox game, career development, career opportunities, maybe a pipeline in for internships, etc. So I think, for that could be something as well for the local team where it's, hey, let's partner with, the athletic department and say like, hey, we want to work with 15 athletes. We want to work with one athlete from every one of your sports. So your school has 16 sports. We want to work with 16 athletes and then kind of provide them the same thing as well. Because it's a win-win, right? It's like you now build a relationship with the team or the athletic department and then the athlete gets something out of it as well. Actually, one thing with the White Sox, they cannot work with baseball and softball players just due to the association of the sport. So if the White Sox or your local baseball team go to the college, like they can't work with the baseball and softball team, but they can work with every other sport. So but it's still providing.
I was going to ask that question because as student athletes, if you're playing college baseball and you're junior year, there's a potential you could be drafted. But if you have an NIL deal with a major league team, that gets really messy. So that was my next question: is if you could do one of those two things. But the answer is no.
Yeah, it looks like it's no, and I think at that point the student athlete has to make a decision, right? And I think at that case it should be, get as much guidance as possible, right? Like I think to me, first of all, for every student athlete, your college athletic department should absolutely be your number one resource, right? Go to your compliance director, go to your NIL director if you have one, go speak with someone in the athletic department and get guidance, right? Because the absolute worst thing that could happen for a student athlete in relation to NIL is that either they lose eligibility or they're suspended or they sign with a supplement company that's tainted supplement and then they fail a drug test, XYZ. So, but again, check, absolutely use your school and leverage your school as your number one resource to this situation, right? It's like, okay, what if I do this? Like, am I ineligible? If I do this, I'm done playing college baseball. Can I keep this deal? Like, absolutely go there. And as mentioned earlier, a lot of schools do not have NIL departments or NIL directors. Generally, your compliance director is going to be your first go-to. So go to your compliance office and speak with them. If you don't have a compliance office for really small schools, your SWA, your senior women's administrator, is generally a good person to go to. And if not, sometimes you just go right to your athletic director for the really, really small schools. Because as we know, you've done that, sometimes you're head tennis coach and your athletic director are the same person at the really small school. So yeah,
that is exactly true.
Yeah, so just go, like, look out for yourself. Always use the school as your number one resource and make sure everything is done properly. Because even when I, represent athletes, like, for example, one of my student athletes plays in the state of Illinois. So my first thing is like, okay, I need to go see what paperwork I need to fill out to become an athlete agent in that state. So I did research for Illinois. It says, oh, in 2021 or 2022 something, like some rule was amended that you do not need to complete any certification to be an athlete agent. I'm like, so I can just go and represent anyone? So I called the state just to make sure. I said, hey, I'm just making sure I'm understanding this correctly. I got confirmation from 2 people, like, yes, that's correct. You don't need to fill out any paperwork. You don't need to send us a check, XYZ. So on top of that, just to even triple check, I emailed the school. I said, hey, I'm thinking about representing athletes at your school. I talked to the state. This is what they told me. And they said, yeah, that's correct. Like, you don't need any you don't need a certificate. Other states are different, New York, California, North Carolina, all these other states. So
that's good that you've got it in writing as well, just in case something came back.
Exactly. Yeah. Because then again, right, it's one of the things. It's like, I'm the in between, but then the student would be the one suffering, right? Because it could be like, well, you worked with an agent and they're not certified in our state, therefore, you've lost eligibility. And it's like, no, I actually have it in writing, from different places, So,
oh man,
it's an interesting world.
For sure. So as long as they stay within the guidelines, everything should be fine. But if the student athlete has questions, it's strongly encouraged that they go to their SW senior women's administrator, their compliance director, or even the athletic director to be able to get some feedback. But the actual sponsoring brand, the team that's interested in working with the quarterback or what have you, don't necessarily need to, but the athlete should 100%.
Correct, yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with the brand going to that as well, because it could be just, hey, we want to work with you, the student athlete, but do you have a connection for us at the athletic department we can speak to? They may say like, hey, talk to my coach, and coach could connect you to someone, or talk to XYZ. So I still think the brand should be careful as well, just to make sure that, that they're, not aligning themselves most properly. Like, say, for example, that, just making this up, like, say, like Dasani comes to one of your athletes and says, hey, we want to do a deal. The athlete does it, and in some writing and some contract buried in there, the school is a Pepsi school, which means they're an Aquafina water company. Mm-hmm. And some legalese may say none of our student athletes can do a deal with any water other than Aquafina, but they weren't informed of this and they didn't know it. So, like, that's key to do that as well. So just like, I think the brand should definitely do their homework with the athletic department as well to make sure, like, everything's good. I may be like a little bit too much about it, but I'd rather be really, really safe and like take a couple extra days or a couple extra weeks, make sure everything's good, as opposed to just flying by the seat of my pants and just doing things, and then it comes back and hurts the student athlete.
Absolutely, because that's the last thing you would want to do, is cost a student athlete eligibility and their career's over, all because of one deal. And so doing the due diligence makes a tremendous amount of sense for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. Well, Tariq, I appreciate you, Tariq. I'm sorry, I pronounced it wrong.
Tariq.
Apologize, Tariq.
You're good.
If teams or brands or even student athletes are interested and have more questions, how can they get a hold of you, Tariq?
Sure. So my website is a good place to start. It's sportscourt.info, sportscourt.info. I do post regularly on social media. You can find me at Instagram and Twitter at _sportscourt. You can find me on TikTok at sports.court. And then you can find me on YouTube Shorts, or at youtube.com/sportscourt. So a lot of content goes out there. Obviously on the social media platforms, it's mainly video content. Twitter's a lot of text content. And then I do write a newsletter as well. There's a link to it on my website. So several places that you can find me, and always happy to speak with anybody regarding NIL.
Fantastic. Well, appreciate you joining the podcast today, and look forward to continuing to follow along with all things NIL with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Enjoyed the conversation, and who knows, maybe we'll have this conversation again next year, and it'll be a complete 180 from what we talked about today.
That's true. You never know. I think right now it's the Wild West in the NIL world.
Yeah.
There's so much questions and so many things going on, and people are learning literally by the day. So it's hopefully by this time next year things have been a little bit more structured, and there's a lot more guardrails to things. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, look forward to the V2 of this convo.